Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's me again, DJ, hands-on SAP Dev with QMacro. Welcome to this regular Friday slot, this regular Friday episode. This is, if my calculations are correct, this is episode 17, i.e. the 18th episode so far. Great to see you all here on the channel already. We've already got some viewers. I've seen Ronnie, Nabheet, good morning, good afternoon, Leo, good morning, Robert, good morning, Helmut, good morning, Vritzau, hi, good morning, and Maxi, good morning as well. So I've got my, oh, it's down here anyway, I've got my stream chat down here. And I've got a slightly different screen layout. I've actually put one of the right-hand monitor into portrait format. So that's why the camera's a little bit higher, or am I? Anyway, I'm a bit lower. But actually, that's working quite well, because otherwise I was having to turn my head really far to see the right-hand part of the right-hand screen. So it's an experiment. I've been using all week my MacBook Pro keyboard, the flat keyboard. And I've sort of started getting used to that again, so now I've moved back to the to my wonderful, almost dropped it, An Pro 2 keyboard. Again, I'm going to make a few mistakes this morning. Why do I do this to myself? I don't know. So without further ado, let us get going. By the way, Ronnie, I just saw that question, or that re-question. I asked a question on Twitter the other day, went unnoticed. Are you using the UI5 inspector in Chrome for debugging? I noticed you use the Elements tab to show that there was something in there. I have used the UI5 inspector. I've not used it for a while. I've not been doing that much UI5 debugging recently, but I would like to get back into that, as it's a favourite subject of mine. So yes, I will be using that again. It's one of my favorite things. There's some really nice debugging tools in UI5. We'll have a look, actually. We're going to look at the Chrome developer tools at a very, very high level in the subject matter for today. Hey, good morning, Nigel. Good day. Good evening. Sorry, not good morning. Where are you, Nigel? I've no idea. But good day anyway. So you're contemplating getting a mechanical keyboard, a Ducky 1 or a Vortex Race 3. Oh, that's interesting. It is a difficult choice. By the way, if you haven't already, let me put that on there. Let me switch to my main screen so I can show you there instead. There's a subreddit called Mechanical Keyboards, and I would highly. Oh, you're in Sydney. Good morning and good evening to you. Yes, good evening to you. Excellent. There's a mechanical keyboard subreddit, which is really, really good. Lots of people asking and receiving advice, asking for and receiving advice on buying keyboards and everything. Moin. Hello there, Mark. And Helmut as well. Yeah, I would recommend that. It depends on your requirements from a keyboard layout perspective. The Vortex, if you're thinking about the Vortex Race 3, that's like a 70-75% keyboard. I don't know about the Ducky 1. Is the Ducky 1 a 60% keyboard? Because I know the Ducky 1 version 2 competes directly with the An Pro 2, which is this one. Then this is a 60% keyboard. So yeah, let's see where you go. I'd love to find out more about the things that are driving your decisions. Helmut, you're just watching an old session on your Chromebook in parallel. My goodness me, I couldn't do that. That's amazing. My brain's not good enough to do more than one thing at once. But kudos to you, Helmut. Okay, so there's the mechanical keyboard subreddit. There's also, just by the by, this is the geekiest. Is it Vinky? The geekiest subreddit I found ever. Oh, there is a Vim Keyboards Vim Keyboards subreddit somewhere. Where is it? Vim Keyboard. Singular. This is just incredible. I mean, how geeky and focused is that So I've subscribed to that subreddit as well. Okay, you do mean the Ducky one too. The race, yeah, the 75%ed, it's really nice. Yeah, I've got the race upstairs. Michelle's not keen on it because it's got Cherry MX Blue. But anyway, so what have we got to talk through before we get into the real meat of the session? And by the way, let me know whether this is working for you in terms of, like a little bit of a news roundup at the start of the episode. 5 or 10 minutes maximum. Then we'll get into the stuff. I think it's really useful personally, but let me know what you think. Yes, the MX browns are really nice. In fact, if you go for these ones here are Gatorade browns, and it's a slightly smoother feel, I think. But anyway, that's it's just, I think you have to try them yourself first of all, I think. So first question to you all: is it easier when I specify the local time zones rather than UTC offsets? I think it is in my brain now that daylight saving has started. I got all sorts of confusion as to what was happening when and in which time zones. And thanks for Srikanth for correcting me this morning. It is, oh yes, I said it was 13:30. It is actually 12:30 in India right now on India Standard Time. So let me know if that is more helpful. It's more helpful to me. I've changed also the standby background. I'll just switch to that, and that should say. Correct. I think it is. Let me know if it's not. Well, actually, Mark, that's a really nice point. Only displaying Waldorf time should be sufficient. I think maybe we'll go with that as well. Maybe I should change at least Berlin to Waldorf. Wow, what a fool. What an opportunity miss. Okay, I'll do that. Brilliant. Remind me later. You can't hear me anymore? Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, I realise now. Sorry, I switched back to the standby where I have the mic turned off. Because, of course, when I'm standby, I'm still preparing and you don't want to hear me typing and coughing and talking to Michelle. So that's why you couldn't hear me. Thank you. So the question was, let me know whether these local time zone names, BST, CEST, IST, and AEDT, are more useful to you. But you can hear me now. Okay, that's good. Okay, so what else have we got here? We're going to talk about a little bit more about what we did on Wednesday. On Wednesday, if you managed to catch the stream, we built a really, really simple UI on top of our Northbreeze app. Again, the simplest thing that could possibly work. And that's sort of partly the point. What is the minimum required to get a UI? And what we did is we added some annotations, and we then set up a simple minimal component-based manifest.json driven Fiori Elements app, and some really simple UI annotations, and we got a beautiful list report, which was almost magic. Fabian, who was there on Wednesday, asked the question about internationalization, because I was also deliberately, in a minimalist way, specifying texts directly, as sort of literal strings. So today we're going to dig in a little bit to scalars, to internationalization. Why was I thinking of scalars? Anyway, yeah, we're going to do that. So that's what we're going to do today. I have been thinking about this for a while. A lot of the live streamers on Twitch also have this sort of back channel chat mechanism for when the stream is not online. Of course, it's great that we can all chat together during the stream when we're live, but I think it would be really useful for us to have a place where we can hang out, not for a huge amount of traffic, but for the occasional sort of question or answer or suggestion or whatever. You can all chat between yourselves and with me. So that is the general idea. So I've created a Slack channel. Now, there's lots of different ways you can do this. A lot of people use Discord, but I didn't want to... Discord. I didn't want to introduce yet another platform to us lot. I think a lot of us are probably already using Slack in some form or other, maybe in this SAP Mentors and Friends workspace, maybe somewhere else. I didn't want to sort of have to bring in yet another thing for you to deal with. So that's why I've chosen Slack. If Discord will work better for you, let me know. Okay, thanks, Ronnie. Slack's fine. Yeah, I think Slack is also fine. Morning, John. Great to have you on board. So yeah, here is the channel, hands-on SAP Dev, in the SAP Mentors and Friends. Put that there, SAP Mentors and Friends. Thanks, Pierre. Workspace. Now, if you're not already a member of the SAP Mentors and Friends workspace, there's a little invite app, and lo and behold, it's an app that's running on Cloud Foundry on SAP Cloud Platform. Ta-da! Not from me, by the way. I can't take any credit for that. So there's the link in the chat for that. So enter your email address to join the SAP Mentors and Friends workspace on Slack, and join the hands-on SAP Dev. Hey, Max and Leo, fantastic. Okay, I think that's really good. I can ask you questions, and you can ask me questions, and whatever. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to move along from here. While we're talking of the SAP Mentors and Friends workspace, there's also SAP Inside Track registration and SAP Inside Track Reg discussion, those two channels there. I think they were set up by Gregor Wolf, and I know that people like Nabheat are already in there. This is for the SAP Inside Track registration app, and the reworking of the app into a CAP powered version. So if you have not joined those channels, I would suggest definitely join the SITReg discussion, and also have a look at the repo here on GitHub. It's a public repo, SAP Event Registration App Backend. I personally haven't had time to have a look at this yet, but I do want to have a look at this next week. I'm looking forward to seeing what folks like Mark and Wolfgang and Nabheat, I think there's a number of people working on there, which is great to see. Christian is doing some stuff, and other folks as well. So yeah, have a look at that, and see if you can contribute with the stuff that we're learning today. So I decided that every episode, or at least every Friday's episode, I'm going to introduce you to another live streamer, a coding streamer. Hey, Jay Paulina, thank you very much for following. Welcome as well. Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce you to another live streamer that I watch, and this particular one is Jeffrey Fritz. Works in the .NET area. I think he works for Microsoft. Great live streamer. I've learned a lot from him, as well as others, for example, like Suze Hinton. I really enjoy his live streams. I don't manage to sort of coincide a lot with when he does live streams, but I watch the video playbacks. Really, really good. He's been building some software for the Elgato Stream Deck, which is really cool. So yeah, check C# Fritz out if you haven't already. Finally, in the sort of news and announcements, we've got a very special guest who's here today. I've seen him, and you've seen him sort of say hello as well. Max, and Max is coming on the next live stream, which is going to be next week, next Friday, to talk about the application programming model, but with the Java flavor. I'm really looking forward to that. So say hi to Max. And Microsoft do some really cool stuff. I mean, there are certain things that I struggle with, let me say, but those are really more in the sort of the productivity suite and collaboration tools area. A lot of the stuff that Microsoft does is awesome. I mean, look at the things like the language server protocol. Look at they bought GitHub and are supporting GitHub in a really cool way. Look at VS Code. Some really nice stuff from Microsoft. It's just that the Office tools are not really my cup of tea. But anyway. So yeah, we've got Max coming on a week today at this time, and he's going to talk about Java and the application programming model. Yeah, Microsoft is really turning around. I really like what they're doing. Just by the by, that screenshot reminds me, if you haven't already, you can use the events section on Twitch to find out what's coming up, and I'm quite proud to say that this is the first time I've ever had more than one future event listed. So I've got today's, of course, which is now, and next week's. Okay, so Vincent, welcome. Oh, yep, 2 there, and we got the hands-on SAP Dev. Oh my goodness, John and Mark and Volker and Tiago and Ronnie. Excellent. Okay, so let's leave that now, and let me get on with some stuff. So where were we? We left off on Wednesday, and we built this little UI. I'm going to show you that, and then we're going to dig into, have a look at a few things that's going on behind the UI. What's the discussion here? Oh, is it discussion about Office and Windows and Outlook? Yeah, nightmare. I'm going to avoid that discussion. So we've got here the North Breeze folder. In it we have the DB folder, within which we've got our CSV files here and our model, which we all know and love by now. We've got our service folder, conventional name, and in there we've got our really basic couple of services. Again, this restricted service is something we just created just for the hell of it. It was a couple of episodes ago that we actually created this very simple function import. Within OData you have entities and entity sets and so on, and the whole sort of RESTful approach to APIs, and then you've got this sort of ugly wart on the side of it, which is a function import, more like an RPC or an XML-RPC approach to something which sometimes is useful. With that, the implementation of this hello function import is in service.js. There we go. So it's there. We created that really simple sort of service implementation, which we're not going to look at in any great detail today. So that's fine. Let's just quit out there. By the way, Srikanth, if you want the in fact, I'll put it on anyway. Keycaster, because you'll notice that the keys I'm using to navigate through Ranger are also Vim keys. And I've also turned on the sort of the outline, box outline on Ranger, which makes it look a little bit nicer, I think. Okay, register using this. Yes, you get an email. Thanks, Napheat, for helping out there on the registration. Cool. Okay. So we've got that. Now let me run this now. CDS deploy. Let's deploy because I might have made some change, I can't remember. And CDS run or CDS serve all, which of course is more or less the equivalent. What is the equivalent? And we can see the stuff that comes up. Server listening at localhost, and in fact, let me just bring up another session here, just to show you. I forgot to mention we've got an app folder now. We've got the DB folder, we've got the serve folder, and we've now got an app folder. And in fact, international, I meant to remove that. I've been playing around with that this morning, but it doesn't really matter. And in our app folder, we've got some files, some sort of static assets, including index.html, and this is what we created last Friday, and the index.cds, which are our annotations. So let's now go back to localhost and have a look what gets served. Where's the? Oh, there we go. It's over here. Perfect. So we now have this Launchpad, Fiori Launchpad sandbox, and a tile here that's been defined by. Let's just go back into here actually. Been defined by our little configuration here. Browse suppliers. Okay, so that's that. So when we click on that, the app will load, and we get the metadata as well, and the actual data. So that's really nice. That's what we did on Wednesday. I thought it would be interesting to have a look a little bit behind the scenes at where this stuff comes from, and then start to look at internationalization-ifying this. Because it was a really good question from Fabian last episode, so let's do that. This is also documented in the SAP Help portal, so it's I wanted to pick something that wasn't undocumented or yet undocumented. But why don't we actually open up, just talking of the conversation I had with Ronnie just now. Let's open up the developer tools and let's see what's going on here. Let's just refresh that. Can anybody see? Yeah, everybody can see. Everybody's fine. Yep, that's cool. By the way, I've got from SAP Inside Track Frankfurt, I've got a new coffee mug. Not that the old one is no good anymore, but I thought I'd sport this one today. So this is the SAP Inside Track Frankfurt 5th anniversary. And by the way, if I haven't sent you any stickers already, give me a shout, or privately via direct message or email or on Slack or Twitch Whispers. I've got these sorts of stickers, and I got a whole load of these Cloud Application Programming Model stickers, and I've also got a couple of 5th anniversary Inside Track stickers. So if anybody wants one of those, there's only 2. Let me know as well. So what's going on here? Let's just flip back. In fact, shall we open code? I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether it's better to use code or Vim. Let's use code because we've got syntax highlighting. I've not completed the syntax highlighting for Vim yet for CDS. So let's use code for the purposes of sort of nice display. So what we've got here is let me just remove that file. I was messing around this morning. I thought I removed everything. App browse. Let me remove that as well. There we go. And it's looking there. That's cool. Okay, fine. So what we've got is our annotation. So what we're saying here is we're annotating the suppliers. And the beautiful thing about when we did this on Wednesday, the beautiful thing was, which we could say annotate North Breeze tab complete dot suppliers tab complete. That's just wonderful, I think. So there's that. And we're bringing that in from our service file, and notice as well that we changed this on Wednesday. It used to say using from /serve/service.cds. We're not doing that anymore because that's not best practice. Best practice is to leave off the extension. And we got these annotations here. So what we're saying here is that we don't want any selection fields. We don't want any fields with which we can sort of do filtering and everything, which results in a lack of anything sort of in this area here. And we want for the fields that are displayed on the line-by-line basis, the line item UI annotation, we want the ID, the name, and the country. And what we're saying here, in fact, we'll just do that. If I do that, for example, we can see that a little bit better. Yeah, you can see that. I'm just looking on the screen here. We're saying here we want the value of the ID property, the value of the name property, and the value of the country property. Now let's just bring in for a second the where is it? The service.cds. In fact, let's bring in the service.cds and have a look here. We can see we're exposing in the Breezy service, we're exposing the supplier's entity. So why don't we have a look at the model.cds to have a look what's in suppliers. And there we go, it's down there. We've got ID, name, country, and products. We don't want products right now because that's an association anyway, so we're just going to keep it really simple. So we've got the ID, the name, and the country, and that is the thing that's being reflected in our index.cds. In line with the line item annotation, what I did on Wednesday was just say wham, bam, label ID, label name, label country. So let's just change this to banana for a second. Just to see what effect that has. I think I mentioned this on a previous episode. I'm actually a big fan of changing things and seeing what happens. That's one of those sort of pseudo O'Reilly books. I quite like doing that sort of thing. Helps me work things out. I'm not sure about you. And then we've also got the header info, type name plural. Let's just put an exclamation mark there so we can actually see what effect that has. That should change the word here, suppliers, exclamation mark, because the type name plural annotation is used in the list report for your elements-based template to give a title to the list of things, to the list of entities for the entity set that's specified for that particular Fiori elements view. Now, let me actually explain that. Let me just move that for a minute. Let's go to, where is it? Yeah, if we look in the manifest.json, we'll see at the bottom here that the target in our root, and it's the only root that exists for the default pattern. So basically this is the thing that gets hit when we go here. The view name is sap.fe.templates.listReport, and the entity set that is being exposed in that view, in that Fiori elements based view, is the suppliers entity. Okay, so that all sort of makes sense hopefully and all joins up together. So there we go. So let me just save that, which is already saved, and also notice that when we were changing static assets like index.html on Wednesday, we didn't have to do any redeploy. But if you change something like an annotation, if you change CDS, I'm finding that I'm having to redeploy. And I think, I'm not sure, I'm not looked into this yet, but I think, yes, it would be nice, Volker, an auto reload on save of the UI. Yeah, I was thinking about this on the train on the way back down, all the way up from London late last night. I was down in London this week, which is the reason I only had my laptop. Yeah, and I thought live reload would be really cool. I mean, obviously there are different tools and techniques for doing live reload, so I'm sure we could set something up. Maybe that's something we can discuss in the Slack channel, sort of over the course of the next few days. But yeah, I think improving our tools is generally very useful, and also I think quite a nice sort of hobby, a nice pastime for some of us. Anyway, I've got some more coffee. Great suggestion, Volker. So yeah, let me do a CDS deploy, and I'll just CDS run, for example, and CDS run. Now we can see that over there. Yes, of course, I'm still running it here, aren't I? Let's just get rid of that. And get rid of that, and try that again. CDS deploy and CDS run. You see that? Yep, you see that down there. Perfect. So now let's switch back and refresh to see what happens. Ooh, lots of things being loaded. That's good. So we should see a new title for the name property. Oh, no, we didn't. I had this on Wednesday as well. Hold on a minute. Let me remove these cookies. There we go. And also just do a empty cache and hard reload. Yeah, there we go. This is given that it's an all-express app, injecting live reload middleware is easy. If only the CDS tooling would be open source and publicly available. Oh, Volker, what a statement to make. I'm hearing sort of little birds here and there. I can't say anything now about that at all. But interesting. Okay. Anyway, let's talk about that on the Slack channel, because I'm just conscious of time. I've been talking a lot already this morning. So we've got now suppliers exclamation mark, and we got banana as well. So that's really cool. So why don't we? In fact, what I wanted to do as well was I did notice that if we look at the Breezy request here, if we request them more, we get another request. So what's that? This is I noticed an OData version 4 feature in this request. Of course, we get the metadata, which we've seen before, and the really interesting thing is, of course, that the EDMX that's compiled during the deploy, gets saved up, ready to be served. I'm assuming I have to do a CDS deploy because that, of course, includes the compile, and we only really want to compile that sort of metadata, that EDMX, once, not every time a request comes in. So I'm thinking that's why we have to do a deploy. We can just do a compile effectively to trigger the compile. Sorry, but slightly burpy. There we go. So we got that, and we can see here, that's slightly small, isn't it? Let me just make that a little bit bigger. We can see here, we've got our label, our property value, property equals label, string banana, and property value, property equals over string country, which of course are then used by the Fiori elements-based UI to decorate, to adorn the actual UI itself. Okay, but the really interesting thing is when we look at the $batch, notice that OData 4 is all batch. I'm not sure whether you can, I did have a look. If we have a look in the UI5 API at the OData v2 model, Vobu for president, kapow, yes, I would vote for Vobu. If we look at the API reference and we look at OData model v2, we can look at the constructor, and there's a useBatch Boolean parameter that's available, whether all requests should be sent in batch request. And what I used to do for Fiori apps, when I was sort of writing them and debugging them, of course by default it's true, but I used to go into the manifest, into the model definition, which is roughly, I mean, this is not relevant for this particular app, but well, I suppose it is, into my model definition and say settings, use batch false, so I could see all the individual calls, which is quite a nice way of sort of helping yourself when you're debugging. Is there an easy way to display the batch responses in a nice way? Not particularly, and this is the reason why I used to sort of turn batch off. This is not, as far as I'm aware, this is why I used to turn batch off while developing, so I could see the individual requests. First of all, I saw what requests were being made, and then would have been batched up otherwise. But secondly, I could see the responses individually. Now, if we look at OData v4, the constructor does not have a use batch option. Now, I've not looked into this too much, but I'm assuming for now that that's because batch is the only thing you can do in v4. I'd be very surprised if it is, but maybe it's true. I'm not sure. OData v4 batch mode. Is there anything? Batch support, batch processing. Okay, there's lots of talk about batch. Let's maybe not look into that right now. Again, look at that sort of in our, the more I think about this, the more our little Slack channel will be quite useful for this sort of discussion, these sorts of discussions, for following on discussions. Anyway, so there's no use batch parameter at all to allow us to turn it off. So yeah, there we go. So let's have a go back here. So we can see the response here. Well, actually, we can see the request first of all in the headers. So of course, a batch OData call is done via an HTTP post, slightly abusing HTTP as an application protocol, but who cares? And in the request payload, let me just, in fact, if I switch these around, that might be better. There we go. In the request payload, you can see, it's almost like, with MIME separators, right? You can see that in this case, there's only one particular request. So again, this makes me think, well, they're batching up a single request. Why are they doing that? Because it's standard in v4. And this is a get of suppliers. Now, this is the thing I was interested in, because if we actually double click on $batch, of course, we're going to get a method get not allowed to batch. And we can actually see that in a warning here, just down here. You can see it. Can you see it? An error occurred, method get not allowed for batch. But what we can do, of course, is just say, okay, well, I'm going to add on now that, and that's what it was actually requesting within the batch call. Notice that it's a really nice way of saying, $count equals true. I think there used to be an inline count in v2, but $count equals true is something I've not seen before, seen outside of the v4 context. Maybe it is, but there we go. So yeah, we can see sort of the calls being made to the back-end Breezy service, to our CDS-based service, or CAP-based service rather, for the suppliers. Now, let's go back to, let's get rid of this. Let's go back to our code and have a look at what we need to do to internationalize this. Okay. Now, there is some documentation online already in the help portal, as I mentioned, but basically, I think it's something that should be fairly straightforward, fairly obvious. And in fact, what I wanted to do as well is show you that CDS in general and annotations in particular, you know, that you can write them in lots of different ways. And I've seen a different way of writing or giving the a heading annotation for each of these things. So just for the sake of argument, I'm going to do that as well. So I'm going to remove the labels from these line item annotations and put them in a separate section. Now, let's do that again and again. There we go. Vim key bindings for the win. So we had a question in the code jam on Friday last week in Frankfurt, and it related to sort of multiple sections of definitions and annotations. And one of the ideas behind the CDS language in general, including annotations, is that you can divide things up and repeat things and build things in or write things in sections that can be then separately maintainable. Small pieces loosely joined. And here's an example. A really silly example, but here's an example of that. So we can actually say annotate north. Oops, hold on, what's going on here? North breeze dot suppliers. So we can sort of have another supplier annotation with, and then we can say ID title, and you could even do this, for example, in the service definition, or more appropriately, maybe not more appropriately, but more easily, because that's where the individual properties are defined. ID title of something there. So why don't we just jump straight in and sort of start to do some internationalization. Now, anybody who's written some UI5 stuff will have come across this sort of construct. So I'll just go ahead and do it. I18N and then a greater than sign. Now, in UI5 speak, that really says to my brain, especially with the curly braces here, this is a binding to a property, which I haven't supplied yet, in a model that has a name, and the name of that model is I18N. So I'm going to actually specify the label, and I'm going to call it ID. Okay. So now we get, really interesting enough, we get from the VS Code extension for CDS, we get a nice little warning. The blue underline is a warning. And if we have a look at that, it says text for translation ID not defined. And so it's doing a little bit of linting for us, and it's warning us that that's the case. What would be really cool if we could do this quick fix here, but there's no code actions available yet. Maybe in a future version of the VS Code extension, we could jump straight to an I18N properties file, which we're going to create manually ourselves shortly. So we have that, and why don't we do a similar sort of thing for the other line item values as well. So let's do that and say name, and what we're going to say here, we're going to say, we'll have, in fact, let's call them, sorry, that's lowercase name because that's the property name, and country, we'll have country there. Okay. By the way, I did have JK escaping, but that really drove me mad on the Mac keyboard, so I've turned back to the normal escape key. So anyway, we've got these annotations now. It's giving us a warning. So how do we resolve this? Well, actually, we can resolve it by creating an annotation file. In fact, let's look at the documentation. Help.sap.com, and actually the only documentation in the help portal I'm going to right now is the CAP stuff, so it goes straight there for us. And there's a localization section. Okay, and there's all sorts of stuff here. I'm not going to go through all of this, but here we go. It tells us that we can put a properties file or a set of properties files, in a certain location, which CDS will then, the CAP mechanism will then find and use to compile the metadata. I guess one thing to point out is that for me, I'm making a distinction in my brain between internationalization at the UI5 app level, which of course has its own mechanism, which is more or less the same, right? And you'd have a set of internationalization property files for the app. But what we're talking about here is internationalization for our OData service. Okay, so internationalization for the text-based, the annotation-powered text-based labels that you get in the annotations in the metadata, which is, it's very, very close to the annotation, to the internationalization stuff we've been doing in UI5 apps, but it's just slightly different in that, it's for a different thing. Okay, so in that respect, if you look through here, you'll see that you can place the internationalization files when you can place them in our app folder, but what we're going to do, sort of to drive home that point, we're going to place them in the next to the model. Okay, so here, for example, inside the serve folder, which is sort of a logical place to put it for me. You could put it, one above there in the sort of the root folder of the app, of the service. Of the project, let's call it. But let's create it in there. Now, one thing that really stuck out to me was this underscore. I mean, I've never seen apart from here, I've never seen the underscore as a standard. But maybe it is. Maybe it's just my ignorance. I've always just called it I18N rather than underscore I18N. However, if you look a bit further down, again, convention over configuration, you can see that you can actually by default, right? CAP will look for internationalization property files in any of these folder names, underscore I18N, I18N, or assets I18N. But it turns out you can actually define and override these defaults. So why don't we do that? And that's what I'd been doing just this morning, just to play around with that internationalization folder, which you may have seen just a minute ago. So if we go into our package.json, let's save that for a second, package.json, and go down to it's line 23, let's go to the middle there, and if we say here, what do we need to do? Oh yes, CDS, and I18N, sorry, we've already got CDS, sorry, I need to be I18N, there we go. And then folders, and that is an array. So why don't we say, well, just for the sake of arguments, let's call it languages. It's a silly name, but at least it's not anything to do with something that might be taken as default. Okay, so there we go. I'm missing a colon there, and I'm missing a comma there. So there we go. So now, with this, we're telling our CAP engine to look when it's compiling, to look in this folder for the internationalization property files, into a language folder, and we can put that language folder. Well, why don't we put it in our serve directory? Folder, directory, folder, who cares? New folder, that's why I keep saying folder, because it's folder in the menu. New folder, languages, okay? And in here, I'm going to create a new file, i18n.properties. Now, for those of you, again, familiar with internationalization in UI5, you will know that the way this works is that there's a resolution process that works out based upon the incoming request for language, which we'll look at shortly, to work out what property file it grabs to surface the right language, to surface the right internationalization text objects in the right language. And the fallback, the very, very base fallback, called the default fallback, is simply i18n.properties, which is here. Let's make that a little bit bigger. i18n.properties. There's a default language as well, which is i18n_en, which is like the generic English. But you can have lots of different languages as well. If you get time, we'll play with those. So if we say now, if we go in here and say, what did we call it? Index.cds. Let's put that over there. Oops. Put that over there. We can say ID equals identifier. So we know it's, yeah, if ID, put exclamation mark, 2 exclamation marks, why not? So we can see there it is. Name equals supplier name, and country equals country. There we go. So that's that. Now, hopefully that's all we need to do in this respect. Oh, type name plural. Well, why don't we fix this one as well by saying i18n type name plural suppliers. Again, this is probably not the best convention, but I'm just making this up. What's going on here? I'm just making this up. So you can see that also is got a little warning. But notice, because of the fact that in our, this is my assumption, because of the fact that in the Visual Studio Code extension, we have the CDS compiler module, which we noticed when we unpacked that extension and had a look at what was in it. And it's a CDS compiler that's bringing all this stuff together, including the CDS definitions themselves and the annotations, and building effectively what will become the EDMX that's served. It can go through and work out, oh yes, because of the specification in the package.json, I know to look in a language for a languages folder, and in that folder I need to look at of course the properties file, and it's found already the name, oops, I don't want that, the name and the ID and the country labels. If I change that and put an X there, save that, there we go. We can, I'm pointing at the screen again with my finger. We can see that because we've changed this, it's now saying, oh, there isn't one for country. Yeah, that's because I've changed it deliberately. So if I undo that and save that, that goes. I think that's really nice. That's really nice. Oh, J Paulina 68. This is cool. This is cool. So there's no need to include them in the app anymore. No, I mean, well, yeah, but don't forget, if you have text elements custom, for custom, what do we call them these days? For free-form apps. Then of course you'll still need to supply internationalization for those textual elements, for example, for names of panels and for texts and for labels and all sorts of things if you're building it from scratch. But the text elements that are from Fiori Elements apps that are driven by UI annotations, of course, yeah, exactly. You can put the internationalization in the service. Thank you, Ronnie. Yes, it is Freestyle Apps, isn't it? Yeah. Freestyle. Sounds sort of very Californian beach somehow. I don't know. Very far away from here anyway. So why don't we save that, and let's go back to our redeploy, which will cause the compilation of the EDMX and everything. Go back here and let's just hard reload that to see what happens. Ba, ba, ba. Ooh, classic tune freestyle. I don't know that. There we go. So we've now supplied internationalization for some of the text via annotations. So we've got type name plural suppliers. We've got supplier name, exclamation mark, exclamation. We've got country, exclamation. So these things we know, because of the way we stupidly type them in, these things we know are coming from our properties file. Now, what actually happens? What's being done here? Well, we can play around with this a little bit. We can say, for example, SAP language equals DE, for example, right? This is one of many ways of influencing the language that is accepted, the language that is requested. let me rephrase that, the language that is specified on requests for resources. So let's just hit enter and see what happens there. We should, I think, get the same thing. I've not tried this, but we should get the same thing because we've only got one properties file, which is the default fallback. So there we go, it's coming up now. Browse suppliers. You can also, of course, so where you would want internationalization at the app level rather than at the what's going on here? At the app level rather than the service level is, for example, where you have this browse suppliers, and this text here comes from something at the app level, which is in the manifest. So you want to internationalize that, and you would want that internationalization model, i18n.properties, at the app level. So maybe, hopefully that helps answer the question as well, J. Paulina 68. So we've now specified the German language, or the base German language, DE, or the base German locale, which has caused some internationalization from a German perspective to already start taking place. Look at this here, suchen. This is a standard field, and of course, because of the way that UI5 is so fantastically managing this whole thing, it's done that for us, okay? And also, if I move this away, you can see, weitere, there are more, okay? So some of the base elements are already picking up that sort of DE because the German language translation for these particular text elements is there built into UI5. Let's go and add an i18n properties file. Let's copy that one and paste it and call it i18n underscore DE. And what we'll say here is, well, why don't we say here, there we go. Volker or somebody else, for example, Mark, let me know. Well, that's quite boring, isn't it? Nama and land. Okay, how about that? Okay, let's just try that and to see if that helps. Now, before we do that, actually, before we re-request it, let's have a look at the metadata request here. You will see that because of the SAP language equals DE query parameter, right? The request for the metadata of the service gets, what's the word I'm looking for? Gets decorated, that's maybe the wrong word, but gets decorated with, or is sent with, an accept language header that is exactly what we're looking for here, accept language DE. Okay, so if you just care to just spend a few minutes or a few hours or a few days behind the scenes, Chrome Developer Tools really shows you all sorts of Händler, yeah, all sorts of things that's going on. So the call to metadata has this accept language, which is a standard HTTP feature. It's language negotiation, a little bit like content negotiation with MIME types, everything. That's another story for another time. If we have a look at, if we double click, we'll see actually here we'll get the English, because this particular tab here is going to ask for it in English. But notice that this here we've got accept language DE. Anyway, stop talking, DJ, and refresh just to see what happens. Händler. I think it might be on GitHub. I want to sort that out at some stage. Yes, and the intention was for Breezy not to be anything that was useful or customizable by you lot. But if you want that, then that's great. It was just a vehicle for experimentation. Notice now it's picking up not the content of the i18n default fallback properties file, but it's picking up specifically the content of the i18n DE properties, as in the locale specific internationalization file. So we got Identification, we got Name, obviously it's Name, you can tell that by looking at it, right? And Land. So that's pretty cool. One more thing though, I think, what did I want to, oh, there was something I wanted to show you. Let's go back here, remind me. What the heck was it? What did I want to show you? I can't remember. Let me have a bit of a coffee. Is that all? Is that all? Is all? My brain's really slow today. I'm not firing on anywhere near all cylinders right now. Oh yes, okay. See, well, coffee helped. It's not even caffeinated, but it helped. Doing something different helped my brain. What I wanted to show you is, of course, this all works as well. I mean, if you're not used to internationalization in UI5, how about this? Hebrew, right to left. If you've never tried this, you should, because it's wonderful. Let's move this back over here. I need to, I've got basically debug mode turned on here. That's why we're getting, you know, hundreds of requests. Normally this wouldn't happen, but I want to see all the requests coming through. That's why it's taking a bit of a longer time. So as you can see here, we've now got right to left out of the box. So this is nothing to do with CDS, this is nothing to do with CAP, but I think it's a really neat example of the way that internationalization is such a standard feature, not only in CAP, but also in UI5, that, you know, we can do things like this. So if I now add, for example, over here, a new file I18N HE. Hebrew used to be IW. The locale, the two character ISO code used to be IW, I think. I don't know why it changed. And then we could say name equals Hebrew. I'm not going to try and type any Hebrew name. Save that. Okay, so let's run that as a final thing. And see what happens. I love also the way that the exclamation marks have been moved to the left-hand side of the word. I didn't notice that before, but you'll see that in a second. Anyway, yeah, there we go, look. I typed in country exclamation mark, but it's changed it around to that. What? What? Awesome. So there we go. We have the Hebrew here, and we've got our fallback names for where there's no label in the locale specific, the requested locale specific properties file. So we've got ID, exclamation mark, Hebrew name, country, exclamation mark. Anyway, I think that's probably enough for now. I could go on, but there's so many different things to look at. I did go over on Wednesday time-wise, so I want to sort of apologise for that and just stick to the 1 hour in this case. So we've got a minute left. Let me know whether yes, table header is messed up. Oh, is it messed up, Mahesh? Count. I think. Well, I've always been assuming that that's the way that you would write it. Use brackets in Hebrew. I don't know. Anybody who knows, again, let us know on the Slack channel. Is that a Hebrew thing that they've removed the closed bracket or the open bracket in right to left approach? If that's the right thing. So Helmut, thank you very much. You got to leave for the next one. Yes, exactly. This is why I want to end on or just before the hour. I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for dealing with my slow running brain today. But I hope you got something out of this, and have a great weekend. And I'll see you next week, next Friday, with Max with some JavaCap. Thanks very much indeed. Bye for now.